Good evening, welcome to Public Forum. The huge turnouts in the recent Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Assam assembly polls left the players confused about the outcome. While the opposition parties think the trend favours change, the incumbents hope it's a verdict in their favour. But both sides agree on one aspect, a newfound drive among voters who want their leaders to be accountable, especially after Anna Hazare's clamour for better governance. Anna Hazare recently implying that good candidates seldom win said, and I quote, "Ordinary voter does not have awareness. They cast their vote under the influence of 100 rupees or a bottle of liquor or a sari offered by candidates. They don't understand the value of their vote." Unquote. A rather sweeping judgment, some would say, but it does make us wonder whether the voter can be bought. How are the Indian voters voting today? What motivates the politician to give freebies and what motivates the voters to accept these freebies? We raise all these issues in today's edition of Public Forum as we try and understand the voters' psyche. And joining me for more on this today is Professor Anand Kumar from JNU. Thanks very much, Professor Kumar, for joining us here. Also with me is political thinker Aditya Nigam from CSDS. Thanks very much, Mr. Nigam, for joining us here. Also with me is Anil Berwal from Association for Democratic Reforms. Thanks very much, Mr. Berwal, for joining us here. And PN Vasanthi from research-based think tank CMS. Thanks very much, Ms. Vasanthi, for joining us here. But before we begin our discussion, take a look at this report.
He will lose his deposit if he contests elections, Anna Hazare said recently, since the Indian voter is not mature enough and is often reported to have voted in exchange of money and alcohol. While there was a lot of hue and cry in response to these words of the much admired social activist, one cannot deny the fact that he was not quite off the mark. Those who have been watching the electoral process in India over the years know that most politicians also believe what Anna Hazare said. Why else do political parties across the country offer cash or freebies to lure voters ahead of elections? Tamil Nadu's ruling party DMK declared in its manifesto for the recently concluded assembly elections that it would distribute free mixies or grinders to women, free laptops to scheduled caste, scheduled tribe students, and free rice of 35 kilograms to BPL families if voted back to power. And AIADMK's list of freebies was a longer one. In fact, the Election Commission reported over 1,400 cases of violations from across Tamil Nadu in just the last 3 days ahead of polling, most of them related to alleged distribution of cash to voters. However, there is no clear data or study to suggest whether such incentives to vote actually enable parties to secure votes in their favour. Sometimes, voters do elect the party or candidate whom they have received benefits from, but many a times they just take the money and then vote for whoever they want to. At the end of the day, perhaps it is a good thing for democracies that the mind of the voter remains to be an enigma. Charu Kartike's report, Lok Sabha Television.
Free mixers, free grinders, free TVs and free coolers. In the first segment, we are focusing on factors that influence voters and their voting behavior. Getting straight into the discussion now, my first question to you, Professor Kumar. Can the Indian voter really be bought today? How are the Indian voters voting? You know, what kind of phenomena we are witnessing?
See, we are a society which is engaging in the process of democratization at multiple levels. It includes voters' awareness building also. So far, Indian voters are found to be voting on the basis of three factors. First and foremost, which is the most desirable factor, is interest politics. Prices, corruption, water, medicine, road, good governance. Second is identity politics, where caste, religion, region, ethnicity count. And third, a situation of choicelessness, where you have to choose between devil and deep sea, and that's where these freebies count. When you have a politics of so-called populism, there the voters become nonplussed. But between Bihar and Tamil Nadu, between emergency related election of 1977 and the India shining vote of 2004, you have many patterns. So it depends upon the context, and actually that die is cast not by the voters, it's by
so
the
there are many
political
patterns.
parties.
There are many patterns. There are many ways in which the voter of today is voting. But Mr. Nigam, if I have to ask you, what one reason would you cite? You know, the way today the voters are voting. There are many who also feel that emotive issues, anti-Brahmin, anti-North Indian, anti-caste, these reasons have taken a backseat today. Economic necessities today are more important.
See, I think there are two things here. One is that there are moments, of course, when what you are calling emotive issues actually become important. But by and large, I think what election studies people used to earlier call tactical voting, which was supposed to be the minorities used to do tactical voting because they are not good candidates and you have to choose between. I think that's become now the paradigm of voting, in the sense that everybody does tactical voting. Everybody actually selects the lesser evil or tries to make calculations and so on. And this has to do very largely with the fact that you actually, for the common person, building up and opening channels of communication with power is a long process. You know, a local dada with a particular connection in the party, who has connections in the bureaucracy and the police and this, that. Now, once you've made those connections, it's a very time consuming process. It's not very easy to make those networks. And then you don't want to dismantle it at the very next go. You want to keep that going as long as things are possible.
Do you really feel a voter who is in a rural constituency is really doing this kind of a tactical voting? Is he really aware and conscious of his power?
You have to, because you have to survive either the landlord or the upper caste atrocities or the dominant caste, and so you have to actually continue, upper caste and dominant caste, basically, so you have to continuously be making calculations, things which we don't often think about because we in middle class, we don't need that.
So if I'm getting it right, your choices are driven by the society and the kind of surrounding you're living in. It's not an individual choice which you're making. Is that the reason?
Sure, it's never individual. It's never individual in our kind of situation, and even though the metaphor I would use here is of dribbling in football, but it's never individual dribbling. It's actually a team dribbling.
Okay, Mr. Berwal, have we really reduced our voters to blocks than to individuals? Some sort of a herd mentality is visible, as Mr. Nigam also said, that, you know, we are not driven by individual choices. What we see around, you know, that's the reason, and that's primarily how we are voting today.
Yeah. See, I think there are multiple factors. I wouldn't say that there is just one single factor which is working, whether it comes to the voting trends or freebies or, you know, populism. But I think one thing which Professor Anand also alluded to is that the engagement of voters. See, who is supposed to engage voters? Although our election commission has started taking some measures, but the engagement of voters actually has to be done by political parties. Rather than engaging voters in the political program of the parties, political parties are resorting to the short-term measure of giving freebies, coming out with populist you know, gifts and all that. I think that is something, so for quite some time our voters were being apathetic because the choice was not there and there is no engagement of there in the political process. But I think that apathy has reached to such a level, now they are kind of saying that, hey, we need to be counted. You can't just keep on running the system without us.
And Mr. Berwal, you are saying these are short-term methods by giving freebies, but politicians call it a substitute for social welfare and redistribution. In fact, a son of Home Minister P. Chidambaram said that it is good economics. Giving freebies is good economics. Would you agree with that?
No, that's just an excuse. I'm sure we'll discuss that more. In fact, that is a major concern for most of the political parties today, the freebies. As Anilji was saying, it has become a way of not engaging enough. It's an excuse for not engaging enough, and therefore you see all these freebies. And I think the recent assembly elections, we really saw the heights of it, giving fridge, giving laptops. I mean, there was a competition for that. In fact, in one of the CMS studies we have done earlier, we tried to show that this is corruption. This is voter corruption, cash for vote corruption. Now you're not giving cash, you're giving gifts instead of it. It is in a way the mother of all corruptions. This is where the actual corruption in our society that we're talking about, and it's now I think it's important to say it openly. This is where it all starts, and we need to counter it here.
Right. So what you're saying is freebies is not a way to actually, when you can't reach an individual voter, that's why that's when you give freebies. But
Exactly.
I have an analysis being done by a group which says that in an election manifesto, when you say that 1 lakh jobs will be given, nobody is going and checking that whether these 1 lakh jobs are really being given or not. So what you are doing by giving freebies, you are reaching to each and every individual voter, and that's a good motivation for each and every voter, because he's seeing his politician coming his home and giving him a fridge. Is that the reason that really excites a normal voter today?
Well, not really. See, voters are voting with multiple purposes. There is one thin layer which makes it a commodity and exchanges his or her vote for something which is immediately exchanged, whether it is 100 rupees or a bottle or now laptop and refrigerator. But there are others who have, a larger group dynamics related considerations, and therefore no matter what you offer me, if you come with the wrong symbol and wrong agenda and you belong to the wrong side of the fence, so far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to vote for you. Maybe I'll accept your refrigerator and laptop or whatever you are offering. So there are certain survival questions. There are different kinds of people in your society, and particularly after liberalization, there are people for whom election matters for their survival. They'll be shifted out from this semi-legal colony if the other side wins. There are others, for them it doesn't matter because they don't need member of parliament or assembly for their daily survival, whether it is child's education or admission in a medical college or getting a berth in a railway compartment. I'm a middle class man, so I have my other privatized situations. The third, who are in the middle, they want more engagement, like women, for example, Dalit, OBC, the recent arrivals, or the landless laborers in the villages particularly. Their election results are going to determine the trend of things. If the present incumbent government is defeated, things will get better, or if it is given another chance, things will get better. Many things. So we can't really, Anna Hazare, with due respect, and I'm for him, but he is talking in a very simple metaphorical language. If he looks at his own experience around Radegaon Siddhi or in last 40 years, he'll make certain corrections.
Okay, quickly.
I wanted to add to that, what he's talking about, this cynicism and the apathy that we talk about. You're right, in the sense the Aam Aadmi or the voter today is unable to see what A government versus a B government is providing for me, and that is another reason why they're providing these freebies. But I think, it's movements like that, and I know you have your own reservations about Mr. Hazare, but the whole
I have no
movement
reservations.
in terms
I'm
of actually mobilizing and shaking people from their bhaiya, you have to select your
Right, he
your
has
leader.
been successful in a way, to
except
mobilize
for
his
his remark about electoral behavior, which requires a
I'll
little
come back
more
to that.
caution.
I'll come
Rest
back
is
to
okay.
that, but an intelligent voter would definitely say that even if you give me a refrigerator, I'm not going to vote for you. I'll take that refrigerator, but I'm not going to vote for you. It's now time for me to take a short break. Next, when we come back, we'll also raise the question, is our Indian democracy really maturing? And also, if the politicians are somehow exploiting the poor class, by the aspirations of poor class to enter or be promoted to middle class. This is the question we'll be raising to our panelists in the next segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You are watching Public Forum, and we are discussing the factors that influence voting patterns. Anna Hazare's fast caught the public imagination and forced the politicians out of their comfort zone. The all-out support of the masses, especially that of the youth, seems to suggest that Anna Hazare is a commander who's certainly not fighting a losing battle. Now we are asking, is this the rise of the radical middle class? Is our democracy maturing? Coming to you, Professor Kumar, again, is our democracy really maturing? What we saw, especially, like many analysts do feel we should not call it a movement, but whatever we witnessed at Jantar Mandir, can we really call it rise of the radical middle class?
No, it's a rise of the people who are interested in participatory democracy more than representative democracy. Representative democracy has become nearly counterproductive. Instead of deepening democracy, it is sickening democracy because it is commodifying the representation process. The tickets are being sold, and after becoming representatives, I'm asking for money to do my public duty, and through MP lad scheme, it has become much more pervasive phenomenon. So the use of money power, which is called now money and
muscle power,
muscle and media, these three M's have infected it very deeply. So Anna Hazare has called the shots by saying that it is an insensitive system where representation is only a facade. Actually, it is capturing the system of decision making. You got to go to the street. You really cannot depend upon just lining up to do your citizenship duty and cast a vote. Beyond voting, you got to be active citizen. So it is citizenship building. I'll not say radical middle class, because middle class plus X, middle class alone would not have changed the situation.
But also you don't want citizenship, you also want citizenship with dignity, and maybe this is a step forward.
So this is a direction of democratizing citizenship building, and here we, coming from middle class, have also become a little more alert. We are no more shy of sitting on the floor led by an old man fasting and crying for justice and crying for fair play. This is where middle class is becoming a little politicized. So from depoliticization, it is politicization.
But I think very important is to see the assembly elections this time that are happening in these prime states, that in Tamil Nadu, Assam, Puducherry, and now in West Bengal from Monday onwards. It's very fascinating to see such high turnout. You know, what does this speak? You know, we're talking about movement in the urban India, but we're also seeing that consistently across the state there have been high turnouts, instead of earlier where we used to have pockets where there were high turnouts and some places where there were very low turnouts. So I think here is a place where you talk about something positive that is also happening. The ECI, the Election Commission of India, has done many initiatives. They have engaged with the voter directly. Earlier, the voter slip that earlier we used to get at homes were given by political parties. Now the Election Commission itself, their officials go and give the voter slip. So the credibility, peaceful elections, fair elections have increased the confidence of the voter also. So let's look at the other positive events that are also happening along with this whole movement. But
interestingly, we also saw the maximum number of violations this time in Tamil Nadu.
Yes, they are very frightening.
Come back to your thing, because this whole Anna Hazare thing is, I think, quite I'm a bit ambivalent about the whole thing, and I think it's not really a question of radical middle classes and so on and so on. And I think you need to actually look at it in perspective. It is definitely a very big, it has captured the imagination of a very large section of well, middle class, normally a middle class which is not interested in politics, but let's also not forget that there have been on two earlier occasions very big corruption sometimes becomes a kind of sign of a larger malaise. So whether it was the JP movement or whether it was VP Singh taking up the Bofors question, both times the corruption issue actually became a very major rallying point around which a certain political realignment took place. This is a very different kind of scenario here, and Anna Hazare, I would actually slightly disagree on this thing, because Anna Hazare here is only one person among there has been a movement which has been building up for some time, and there are a whole lot of elements. There is also the NAPM some level with critical support, there is the RTI movement, there are various other kinds of small groups and so on. All of them who have a very recent memory of starting from CWG to Bellary to a whole range of
pent up emotions
where
in a way.
The real redistribution, in other words, looting of public funds to fatten the fat cats in the political and corporate domain. So that is where I think this has touched a chord.
But do you feel we cannot really deny that the kind of mass mobilization we witnessed, especially around this movement, has really made the politicians uncomfortable, and it has taken them out of their comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And means, can we really call this a reason of seeing high turnouts in assembly elections? Anti-incumbency can be a factor, but post Anna Hazare movement, people are thinking that they can bring change.
I don't think so. I don't think this is a direct relationship there, because I think there, especially in assembly level things, there are a whole lot of other factors which operate.
Local.
And I don't think really either this or even the fact that they have been promised laptops and refrigerators is really going to make a difference. But I do want to register one point here, that Anna Hazare, of course, I think is a bit of a, he made a bit of a fool of himself by making that statement about voters. But political parties who actually do it are, they are politically correct enough to know that they can't say it. They can't say that we are going to buy the voter, but they do it. They are no less cynical than Anna Hazare. So let us not say that it is only Anna Hazare who is being cynical. These political parties who are doing it are equally cynical.
Do they also do some sort of a research that what kind of products they should give to the people? I'm just curious. I'm just curious.
No, but I'm not,
because I was reading somewhere it said that by giving grinders they are empowering women and women feel really happy. So you don't talk about water, you don't talk about electricity, but you give grinders and you give coolers and how these things will function.
Bijli nahi hai, what do you do with a grinder or a laptop?
these freebies are not new, Natasha. It's been happening for a long time. It's just that the magnitude and the scale and each product is becoming more and more important. I think that's where it's a scary thing. And like I said, all these in spite of the ECI, you know, they have put up commissioners independently monitoring expenditure. All these, besides that, so imagine. इतना भी डर नहीं है अब. Look at the manifesto, for example. Where is the manifesto hold? Earlier manifesto में हम लिखते थे कि we are standing on this for these issues. Where are these issues now? They must be writing, we'll give a fridge in these manifestos now. So it's quite fascinating. Have you done anything on
But Mr. Berwal, you know, do we see some sort of an interstate disparity here? Here is a state, especially, you know, if we talk about Nitish Kumar's government, where people voted for development, they were happy. That's a different story. Even they got cycles. But, you know, when you're talking about things which you are getting, you know, if you compare a cycle with a cooler, cycle is of much relevance than a cooler. So do you see some sort of an interstate disparity? And also my second question, are the politicians very smart? What they are doing, they are capitalizing on the poor's aspirations of being promoted to a middle class, and that's why they are giving them things which make them relate to the middle class.
Right. See, I think there are a lot of similarities and there are a few disparities also. The fact is that the type of political scenario that is there, and you talk about you know, positives and negatives. I see some positives and I also see a lot of negatives. I think the positive, if you look at, for example, Tamil Nadu, unprecedented amount of cash and freebies that has been seized. One very positive, that, and you could call it that maybe there were more violations, but I think violations has been going on for a long time, but Election Commission has become more strict.
Exactly.
Now political parties are also seeing that you know, Election Commission actually is serious about this, because for a long time they were just making statements, but now bringing income tax officers here and there, and I think, you know, they are telling political parties that you have to take us very seriously, right? The other very positive thing is that the number of complaints that Election Commission has actually received, and a lot of places where people have actually returned the freebies back and they have complained freely. So I think that is a very positive sign.
I think so too.
The negative sign is that our political class is very resistant to change. They don't want change. They want the same system. They know how to work in this system. They want to continue it. There is no inner party democracy. There is no engagement of a normal political worker when it comes to giving tickets. Nobody has any power. People sitting in the high command or somebody's family members, they decide. So I think the deepening of democracy is happening in some ways, but there also are a lot of areas where, you know, a lot of public opinion is required before we can make even a small change.
So greater participation and greater civil society involvement is needed. But I was reading a DMK leader saying that freebies will continue till the poor exists. So a clear state, you know, where you're not even, you know, a completely shameless opinion that, you know, it will continue till the poor exists. So you really, you know, you have to eradicate poverty from the country to hope that freebies will disappear.
I'm very happy that you have called the cat by its real name, shamelessness. To pursue power, I got to be shameless. This is what was said by Chief Minister of one of the states soon after Anna Hazare's statement, and he said, we all carry our election campaign with black money. The expenses are so high that we cannot have any other way except to do it. Now, at this point, there are three things which have converged. Because of liberalization, crony capitalism. Instead of bureaucratic capitalism, crony capitalism. So the politician counts, and therefore the capitalist class will give a lot of money, and there are now global capitalists. Second is dominant caste democracy, where no matter what, the people on the margins, so-called weaker sections, no matter what you give in the form of reservation and affirmative action, the levers of the power are within the range of dominant castes, and that includes middle caste and the upper caste. And third is dynastic party system. Now with these three negatives, the voters become totally helpless, and election commission is only a facade, because you know how the election commissioners are appointed. In spite of all the show of ID cards, etc., and all these complaints talking to us through television, Chief Election Commissioner should be raiding the headquarters of the major political parties in Tamil Nadu. Whom are you reporting and what for? So therefore I suggest that we must look beyond the present format. Otherwise it's only a kind of a complaining opportunity. Every election becomes some kind of a mixed bag. We cannot live without elections, but we cannot live with this kind of elections.
Okay, we cannot live with this kind of election, but dynastic politics, as you said, in fact, few people also believe that the day is not far off when Indian politics will be limited to 500 families, and that's very scary. But you talked about we talked about caste being a dominant factor. Now, Bihar is one state, where caste is deeply entrenched. But what we witnessed in assembly elections was that caste took a backseat and development became a priority. So, if things really, if this kind of a thing really multiply in other states also, we might see a change.
100%. See, as a student of Indian society, I must say that let us not make Bihar synonymous with casteism and Tamil Nadu with secularism. No, it's all over. Different idioms. And as Bihar is also a poor state, a state led by corrupt politicians, therefore it becomes easy to beat Bihar with the stick of casteism. See, identity politics is the mother of casteism or communalism at the moment, and when it becomes counterproductive, people get tired, then they move to interest politics. It is people of Bihar, not because of any external motivation, who got into this backward forward business, but after 15 years they have a right to correct themselves, and they brought back performance, governance, clean leadership on the agenda. Similarly, Tamil Nadu, they are people of India, they have fought for this right to vote. And they will come back, and all these people who think that the poor can be cheated with these freebies will be having a humbling experience sooner than later.
But we have to wait for the election results also and
Three more weeks
and see how the voters are responding in all these states. But time now for us to take a short break. Next, when we come back, we'll focus on electoral reforms, and also if you have right to vote, why you can't have power of right to not to vote and not to choose any of the leaders or any of the political parties, which the kind of option you've been given. We'll ask these questions to our panelists, and even you can join us live on our program. You can call us on our toll-free numbers after this break. Stay tuned. As many as 150 newly elected MPs of the 15th Lok Sabha have criminal cases pending against them, while nearly 300 have declared assets worth more than 10 million rupees. Dominance of money power in elections and criminalization of politics is order of the day. Now we are asking what it takes to bring electoral reforms. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can join us live on our program. You can call us on our toll-free numbers 1-800-11-5313 and 1-800-11-5314. I'll start with you, Ms. Vasanthi, this segment. The question of electoral reforms, we have seen there has been talk about bringing electoral reforms, but how much time will it really bring, will it really take for us to bring in electoral reforms? Do you really see political will to bring in these reforms?
I don't think it is a very important question about political will, but I don't think it is only about political will anymore. I think now with the kind of swing that you're looking at, what civil society has seemed to have woken up, or so has the Aam Aadmi seemed to have woken up. So it will be, as Professor Pradhan said, it will be sooner or later. It has to happen. Now you talked about criminalization. I think that's an important issue that is with the ECI. ECI has already done many reforms, whether it is delaying the voting pattern or making efforts in controlling the money power and the muscle power, or engaging with the first time voters, or engaging with voters to go and vote and break the apathy, or in Assam going beyond communities to telling them to go and vote and avoiding the violence that we're used to seeing around voting days. Having said that, I think we are going beyond just political will to get it. Hoga hi. It has to happen. When is the issue? And I think it is we're working towards it. I think that's what
so
I
it
can
has
say.
to happen. The question of
Yes.
political will is just not there. You have to do it. You have to bring in that change. But Mr. Berwal, you do a lot of work on this front. At this time, how far are we from electoral reforms? Veerappa Moily has said by this August we will be seeing some sort of a framework. But can this be a reality?
Well, Veerappa Moily is not the first person to say that this will be done in this in this month, right? There have been talks about this for decades. In 90s, one of our presidents actually said that there is no need to bring a bill to ban criminals from contesting because political parties can very easily do it. They don't just have to give tickets. And every person, whether it's Sonia Gandhi, Manmohan Singh, L.K. Advani, Mayawati, Nitish Kumar, you talk any head of the party, everybody says that we will not give tickets, but when to people with dubious background, but when it comes to giving tickets, they cannot find a person with integrity and honesty. They rely back on this muscle power and money power. So Veerappa Moily has made the statement and they are doing these regional consultations, which is 6 consultations have happened. Already they have missed their deadline. They were supposed to have a national consultation in early April. They have already missed it. Whether it will happen or not, we will have to see, because this is not the first time. There have been several commissions that have been set by every NDA came to power. They also did the same. The reports are lying there. Law Commission 1999. I mean, it's not that, I think it is a question of will. And it's a question, but I don't think these guys will do it unless and until there is pressure, just like what Anna Hazare movement has shown.
So we have to build up that pressure. Yes. I have a caller with me from Delhi itself, Hemant. Yes, sir, please ask your question.
ये कह रहा था कि 15वीं लोकसभा में 25% एमपी क्रिमिनल हैं, तो आप टिकट ही उन्हें मत दीजिए जो जिनका क्रिमिनल चार्जेस जिनके ऊपर फेस हुए हैं, तो आप उन्हें पार्टी टिकट क्यों देती हैं?
Okay, thanks very much for your question. I'll come to you, Mr. Nigam. Now, any normal citizen would like to know why political parties give ticket to these kind of people who have criminal records.
See, the problem is fundamentally with the election system itself. Now, anybody who's tried to do the kind of politics that Anand or we have done would know. I mean, I've conducted also election campaigns, parliament level election campaigns, and I've seen the way things work there. It's a mobilization of a whole lot of things, including it's not something which you can do without money, it's not something which you can do without huge amount of resources and so on. So it is always weighted in favor of a certain kind of impact of money, fund mobilizing capacity, the muscle power mobilizing capacity and so on. So what I think you need to have is a relatively a move towards smaller constituencies maybe. But the other thing, which is one, we need to be very careful about this thing about criminal cases. I can tell you that most political activists have criminal cases filed against them which are actually completely not. Any trade union activist will have criminal cases. They don't now charge them with political...
kind of criminal cases is also
they don't charge them with political cases. They deliberately charge them under criminal cases. So anybody who's been involved in a strike, he's got a series of criminal cases, and you say, criminal cases. This is not, we need to actually distinguish between different kinds of cases. What are the cases?
But the 150 MPs we have in Lok Sabha, they don't have...
I don't know, because there are also some left party people who have, or others who have that kind. So we need to be a little discerning in this. And the other question which I think is important here is that you need, as Berwal Sahab was saying, it is not, these commitments have been made many times in the past. What you probably need are continuous countervailing powers. Also, it's not enough for this movement to come and then dissipate, and not one movement. You need more and more countervailing powers in society in the form of different movements and groups.
Right, so build more pressure and tell the politicians.
So that the political system is under, or the party system is under continuous pressure from a range of different forces.
Okay, I have a caller with me from Andhra Pradesh, T.H. Maraya. Yes sir, please ask your question.
Hello.
Yes sir, please ask your question.
Can I expect without muscle power, without money power today political scenario?
Okay, thanks very much Mr. Maraya for your question. Professor Kumar, you just heard what the caller asked, that can we really expect politics of our country today without muscle power, without money power, and are we short of people with impeccable integrity?
Not really, it's the other way around. There is much more engagement of idealist people and their so-called civil society or non-party movements, and we have brilliant people who have mobilized the country to the extent that the laws have been changed. Recently you got 4 rights delivered to the people of India. I started with right to information, then we had right to rural employment, then we had right to education, and then Forest Rights Acts, and there are 2 more rights which are in the making about food and health. So somehow it is slipping away from the hands of our lawmaking bodies, the role, because incompetent people, because of other considerations, and these 3 able panelists have enumerated, have become the desirable people, and major political parties, not the minor political parties, are guilty of it. And then it becomes much more compounded when there are smaller parties, because then the riff-raff is left for the smaller parties who are rejected by the major parties. They go to the smaller parties or regional parties. But I think the change is at 3 levels to make the dream of my friend realizable, because it's not a dream, it was a reality. The election of 1977, election of 1984, election of 1989, these were elections free of the 3 vices of money power, muscle power and media power. But the last election, 2009, was one of the last bearable election. It created fractured mandate, and it has created great disappointment. The 3 problems are: number 1 and foremost, the local level bodies, the grassroots democratic, what you call grassroots governance. Panchayat is most polluted at the moment. We are not talking about it, but that was the saving grace till very recently. But 73rd, 74th Amendment of Rajiv Gandhi is proving to be a kind of a diseased amendment, because panchayat elections have become, which is more face-to-face election, is so polluted. 5 lakhs to 15 lakhs for one village panchayat election. There we have to give them more power, more muscle, and election commission must look there. That's where the problem is more manageable. Number 2, feminization of the political space. 33% reservation of women will make great changes, as it happened in Bihar. They made 50% reservation for women, and the whole face of electoral competition changed. The agenda of political parties changed in spite of such a rotten party system situation in Bihar, because of a variety of factors. And number 3, as I said earlier, this idea of crony capitalism. There has to be an accountability of the capitalist class. We are barking on the wrong tree. It is not the voter. The political parties are semi-victim, but the prime mover of this polluting, devaluing and delegitimizing the electoral process, which is a very hard-earned process, is the international capitalist class. I'm not being cynical, but the kind of money which is available to the ministers to grant 1 license is exemplified by just this tiny instrument called G2 spectrum.
Exactly. So the bigger responsibility is of the political parties. Of course, the voter has a responsibility, but political parties have to adhere to their responsibility. It's now time for us to take a short break. Next when we come back, we'll discuss how can we make the voter and especially the political parties more responsible. Stay tuned. The central problem is distrust in politicians, despite their elective legitimacy. So what needs to be done? How to make the Indian voter and the political parties realize that the power of one vote is tremendous and that great power means great responsibility. In short, how to make him or her a responsible voter. What's the road ahead? If you have any questions, join us live in our program. Call us on our toll-free numbers 1-800-115313, 1-800-115314. Before I come to this question of how to make the voter and political parties more responsible, I would like Ms. Vasanthi, you to comment on two things. That's the urban phenomena when it comes to voting, and also the way youth is voting today. Because if I have to quote Mr. Manishankar Iyer, he says that masses vote and classes rule.
I'm not going to comment. He's quite an intelligent politician with us, but in a way he's talking about how the urban mass is not voting. It's, if you notice, even the assembly election or in the last parliamentary elections, we had more rural voting than urban voting. Mumbai or Delhi or even the metros had really apathetic voting, 40, not even 50%, which is quite frightening in many ways. So when we talk about deepening of democracy, it's not really happening, in the sense we are trying to cover lot of space, but we're missing out these important pockets who are influencers, who are just sitting back in the chair and saying dekhte kya hone wala hai. You know, that kind of an attitude is kind of scary. But look at the movement that has happened in the last few months, the scams or the kind of corruption that has eaten and woken up most of the urban apathy. I think there is certainly a new wave that is happening, that they're going to put all stakeholders from different sections, whether it's civil society, whether it's media, whether it's the urban youth. There are 50 lakh first-time voters in West Bengal this assembly election. I'm very eager to see how they are going to vote. Are they also going to take the same stand as we all have been taking, ki koi farak nahi padta, and not go and vote, but they're going to show some voice, is something that we are all very eager to see.
Okay. We have a caller with us from Delhi. Yes, sir. Please ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask two questions.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please ask your question.
First question is that why don't we have something like property ceiling? Like अगर कोई भी 5 करोड़ से ज़्यादा कमाता है तो whether it is legal or illegal, automatically it becomes government property. So no one will try to earn more than 5 crores.
Okay.
This is my first question. Why don't we have such legislation? And second question is that to the professor from JNU, it is suppose the Anna Hazare movement ended in 4 days. अगर वो इंदिरा गांधी की तरह बिहेव करती आज की सरकार अन्ना हजारे पर, अगर ये 2 महीने चल जाता अन्ना हजारे का, तो क्या अन्ना हजारे जेपी मूवमेंट को हरा नहीं देते?
Okay, thanks very much for your question. Professor Kumar, I'll give you both the questions. Please respond.
आपने जो सवाल पूछा उसमें संपत्ति पर सीमा लगाने का सिद्धांत किसी माने में गांव में तो है, जमीन पर सीमा है और भू स्वामित्व में सीमा है, शहरी संपत्ति पर सीमा नहीं है और नकदी संपत्ति पर भी सीमा नहीं है। और इस पर आपके सुझाव को देश को सोचना चाहिए, क्योंकि देश में जो 84 करोड़ लोग हैं उनकी तो खर्च की क्षमता 20 रुपए रोज से ज़्यादा है नहीं। हाँ, कोई 100-125 लोग ऐसे हैं जो अरबपतियों की सूची में हैं और कोई शायद 3% लोग ऐसे हैं जो करोड़पतियों की सूची में हैं। उनको सोचना पड़ेगा, तब फिर हमारी संसद में भी ढेर सारे लोग ऐसे मिलेंगे 300 से ज़्यादा जिनकी संपत्ति को सरकारी खजाने में जमा करना पड़ेगा। जो दूसरा सवाल था अन्ना हजारे के बारे में, सरकार ने दे हैव डन अ वाइज थिंग. If they had made it an ego question or a question of irresponsible arrogance of power as demonstrated in 74 with JP or during VP Singh's protest in 89-90, things would have gone out of hand much more unmanageably. Actually, last time also it became unmanageable. They had to declare emergency. So I think this was a very wise thing that the government understood the genuineness of Anna Hazare's call, and today we are very relaxed that there is a culture of dialogue getting restored through peaceful methods also. Otherwise, government was talking, but talking only after kidnapping, only after Naxals were picking up guns. But this time it looks like that the voice of reason and voice of conscience is getting some space.
What surprises, maybe, surprises everyone is why the action, why the response is always reactive rather than proactive.
Proactive, that's the problem. That's what these people are telling you, that the system is getting its justification because of our larger silence. We are tolerating, as Aditya ji was saying, we have become people victim of this lesser evil syndrome. So we are not looking for ideal, which was which was the expectation from citizens. So lesser evil, because there is a lot of evil in the form of major political parties and the kind of system of election. Unless you have right to recall these arrogant, self-appointed messengers of people's voice.
Who is going to pass this right to recall? 2/3 of the majority is needed for passing this in the Lok Sabha, and we really don't know. The politicians would agree to that. But I'll take final comments on the show. I think when the caller said about 5 crore, what he also meant was if we can have equitable distribution of wealth.
Yes,
so if you have
some
5 crore
of inequalities.
Exactly. Final comments on the program, and I'll start with you, Ms. Vasanthi, again about the point which you were raising earlier. How to make both the voter and the political parties responsible. Then I'll come to you. Yes, sir.
I think the process has already started of making both the voter and the system little more accountable. It's just that the reforms have been put in a box and then just going to sleep on it. We're not moving fast enough on some, we have forgotten some, and we're not taking action on others. The reforms and the thought, we have in our country very intelligent people and who have come up with alternate solutions or suggestions, like the caller that's now made. We've had many such discussions, we've had many such reports lying in somewhere in closed doors who are not even talking about. It's just that collective consciousness and collective will, not just political will, collective will.
Collective consciousness and collective will.
All stakeholders come together and put appropriate pressures to take the reforms further.
Okay, Mr. Berbal.
Yeah, see, I would say there are 3 points on which we need to work. The first thing is we need to ban the criminals. In the case of CVC, Supreme Court thought that a mere FIR was enough to cast aspersions on the integrity of the CVC, and they revoked the appointment. So at least for the heinous criminal charges on the people, we got to bar them from contesting elections. The second thing is we have to figure out to control this money power. If you look at the statistics, 5 crore and above wealth declared candidates, the chances of winning in Lok Sabha was 33%. But if you had 10 lakhs and less, your chances of winning was 0.6%.
Exactly.
So it's a huge role that the money is playing. The third thing that we have to figure out is how do we rein in the political parties. Today they are completely unaccountable. There is no democracy within the political parties. How the candidate selection takes place is completely intransparent. Where do they get their funding from? What do they do with that funding? Nobody is checking that. No, there are no auditing, and until we have a law which has already been suggested by several commissions to rein in the political parties, it's going to be very difficult.
Okay, Mr. Nigam, final comments from you.
Well, yes, my only comment on this is that I'm not a great believer in laws and statutes changing things. I think that there is actually, if I may take a leaf from Ram Manohar Lohiyar's 60s slogan, Zinda Kaum mein 5 saal intezar nahi kiya karte. It is only an active citizenry which can ensure anything. And that active citizenry has to be continuously in. There have to be various ways. It cannot be dependent on the will of the government and so on.
Okay, but someone who's born post 1980s, can we really go back to the politics and to the politicians of 1970s and 1980s in this kind of a scenario? Do you think it's very utopian to ask this?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. I think, in fact, one of the things this right to recall was a slogan of the JP movement. It's not something which is coming up now. The thing is that kind of pressure has to be continuously kept up. Otherwise, and to bring down the whole thing which had happened in a facetious way in this, that the whole question of legitimacy boils down to election. कि अगर आप elected नहीं हैं तो आपकी कोई legitimacy नहीं है, ये तो नहीं हो सकता.
Okay, Professor Kumar, final comments from you.
I think, as I said earlier, we have to look at the political parties. They are the prime movers. They are the pillars of our electoral system. And second, the process of election. It is more tinkering with the process rather than the principles. We must recognize that the election is a process for certain principle of representation, and we see the deficit of representation on gender lines, on class lines, on regional lines, and we got to look at it. And there, state funding of election process plus an overhaul before it's too late, before another Anna Hazare with real tsunami of people's power hits the system, and that will be very late. So if you look at it in comparative terms, comparing with Pakistan, Myanmar, Nepal, we are moving on. But when you compare with yourself, Nehru's, we are in a very regressive situation.
Right. So the political process needs some serious overhauling, and it is important to bring in these changes. But as you said, state funding of elections, that asks for another public forum. But thanks very much for joining us in this program, and we have to wait and watch how these assembly election results will come. But that's all we have for you in another edition of Public Forum. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.